I think we have an interesting set of circumstances at play here. We have a city that's coming back or has come back from bankruptcy with 3 balanced budgets. We've seen a remarkable amount of investment and renewal, lots of activity and interest, stadiums, hotels, market rate housing, businesses, and the like. Significant slowing in the decline of population. Yet this glass half full is countered by a persistent perception of spatial inequality that downtown, midtown, and soon the new center area are all centers of employment, commerce, and services, but elsewhere in the city, these types of investments and improvements are not being seen. That a majority black city is struggling with persistent and concentrated poverty with a rate of around 40%. And this class, this group, is not being included in meaningful ways. And we have an extremely high tax foreclosure level that has lowered rates of home ownership and interrupted the transfer of wealth, and it has become a barrier to economic equity. So we have a tale of 2 cities. So the conversation I want to have today with our esteemed panelists centers around how should we begin to address some of these issues to ensure racial equity, economic equity, and inclusion as we develop the city. So let's start around the theme of housing. And maybe this is Donald's question. What is the city's housing strategy? And more specifically, how does it speak to inclusion?
Thank you for starting with me on that heavy question. I think it's 2 parts. So it's one is like, how do we get to those surrounding neighborhoods? And I always tell people with the city of Detroit, we don't develop anything. We encourage developers and we provide resources for developers to develop in those areas. And so how do we encourage developers to actually get out in the communities outside of the 7.2 and really take an interest in those areas that deserve to have neighborhoods that have clean and safe and decent housing, and also push for resources also in their commercial corridors. And so right now, the city is, we've selected 10 neighborhoods throughout the city outside of the 7.2. We call it the strategic neighborhoods, and we're also funding it with the strategic neighborhood funds, which we are putting in grant money into areas which we're going to work on parks and also housing, attacking single family and trying to develop those and provide rehab opportunities for single housing, and also looking at the corridors. And we have to do it through community engagement and planning and talking to the people who are in the neighborhoods to ensure that we're bringing the type of development that they believe is inclusive and that they have a part and a say in. And I think that's also very important. But that's the one of the biggest parts, right? The second is the Affordable Housing Leverage Fund, which we had talked about earlier. We're trying to raise $250 million over the next 5 years to preserve affordable housing in the city of Detroit. We have to do better to be inclusive, and this is our first attempt because we have to be able to put the resources in. We know as a city we don't have enough money in our coffers to do it, so we need help from the philanthropic community and also investors in the city who are interested in the city, because we won't make it even the 7.2 if we're just focusing on the 7.2.
So building on what Donald said, I think investing in a partnership between community development sector and the city could really add to that and would provide a lot to support of that. So the community development organizations, the nonprofit developers are already in the neighborhoods, they're already working there, they're invested, they have a lot of insight, that they could provide, but we need to be really investing in their capacity to do a lot of what the city and other for-profit developers can't do and don't want to do. And that is particularly providing the affordable housing resources that we need. Not only that, just strengthening this relationship will help on this end of making sure that all of the neighborhoods are covered. And so as we recognize now, we have limited resources. Everyone in the city knows that. Understand why the city is targeting those neighborhoods that make the most sense in terms of coming around and seeing results, but also recognizing that we represent CDAD, the entire city, that all residents are concerned, that all residents are interested in having a strong neighborhood, and what do we do in the interim? And that's where the partnership between the community development sector can really support and build that up. And so I think I'm pleased with Donald's leadership and a lot of what the city's trying to do, but definitely want to still continue to present the community development sector as this waiting partner who has been doing this work for decades, and look for a stronger relationship.
I think that we have so many amazing tools to build affordable housing, and that's when we talk about the 9% tax credit. It's really an incredible tool especially for Detroit and the vacant historic buildings that we have here that have been vacant and blighted for years, because sometimes it's the only way that you can have the dollars available to build quality housing and with affordable rents. I mean, if you were to go into these buildings and have to put $200,000 a unit to renovate them, your rents just can't support that. And I just feel like sometimes that we really need to partner better, between the city and the developers to know that. I mean, I was looking back in Grand Rapids in a 3.5-year period from, say, 2012 to mid-15, had 29% tax credit awards. And if everyone here, I think, knows how Grand Rapids downtown is just thriving. And I think that the city worked with developers. I mean, I remember being with a developer at midnight that got a letter from the city that he needed at a last minute to be put into the MSHDA application to go in. And it's just such a competitive process. If we don't work together, we're not going to get these awards. And I think that that's something that we really need to focus on. I think there's incredible tools available. And if we could work together, whether it's the state, the city, county, however we can gain support for projects, I think we have the means to make them work. We just need to make the team to make them work.